So I've been thinking about how, in my one dream that got me started again on this whole YouTube thing, um, the girl said that I needed to start sharing the story I already had to tell before more of my mission would be made clear. And I was just thinking that it's like, it makes perfect sense, like, with everything I've been kind of processing through this year. Because it's like, I guess, my live experience of unraveling the things, and being able to see things from a different angle and make sense of them in a way I wasn't able to see them before, and make connections that I wasn't able to see until I started processing through some of the junk. And I was thinking about this because, I went over to my brother's house last night, and I mentioned that the other day my sister-in-law had randomly said that they were thinking about leaving the area, and if they did, I would be more than welcome to go with them. And that was like the first time it had ever occurred to me that might be a possibility of a way out of the current situation that I've been in. And kind of trying to figure out, I've asked myself a lot in the past year. It's like, okay, if I could go anywhere, where would I go? Because that's been something that I haven't really had any kind of set plan or idea for where I might want to. But I've kind of been getting these little things pop up where it seems like I feel kind of called to go to Pennsylvania. And that's not somewhere that I don't know. I guess I never really, like I said, I hadn't considered really going anywhere. I always thought I was just supposed to do the family thing, right? That was how I was raised, was not to go out and explore the world on my own or do anything like that. It was, you grow up and do your obligations and, pay back your time at taking care of your parents as your parents took care of their parents, and so on and so forth. And it's like, that's kind of a really shitty way to go about life, I think. Because I feel like it's not about not wanting to help them or anything like that by any means. It's more the point of your sole purpose of living is to do this thing. That's shit. I don't want to be just take over their perceived responsibilities for or obligation or whatever, because they did all this stuff for their parents and were never able to live their own lives. So it's, I get the idea of wanting to care so much about your family that you want to take care of them. But in the time that I've been trying to process through all this stuff, I've talked about, my mom will throw out the comments about when I say something about the codependency in the family, and she wants to spin it back right on me. And it's like, you are very codependent. It's like, look, I was never raised to be my own person and to have any kind of life. I was raised just to fulfill my obligation, and I wasn't supposed to do anything other than that. But personality wise, that's not who I am. And I care about my family and I do want them taken care of, but I also am well aware that as they've gotten older and they've started shifting into the mindset of where they were when they were taking care of their parents, or where they perceived their parents to be when they were at that situation. I don't know how to say that clearly. But now that the age-wise is more where they were when they were taking care of their parents, it's like, they're really not taking care of themselves. And like that's the biggest thing. Like I've noticed since I've been back from Alabama, it's like I'm the one that's expected to remind them to take their pills and to do the things, and it's like that's shitty. I don't want to do that. You know, if you are, your whole plan was just to basically become useless so your kids have to push your ass around. No. That's not, no. Yeah, it's just, I was walking around the house yesterday and there's lots of clutter, okay? And it's not a new thing, and it was difficult when I moved back home after being out in a house and having my own stuff, and then having to fit all my stuff back into this house where, you know, where I grew up. But they've also been collecting more stuff, and there's a lot of stuff. Since Gracie's not been around recently, my mom started to clear out her toy closet to get rid of some of the stuff that she's aged out of. You know, some of it she'll send to my aunt because my cousin's pregnant, so, you know, she'll want to have toys for her grandson whenever he comes around and is old enough to care about that kind of stuff. So, it's fine. It's great to get rid of the stuff, right? But she pulled everything out of the closet, started separating some of it, and then just quit. I was like, too tired, didn't want to go any further, just got kind of over it, got distracted, whatever, and hasn't returned to it. So we have a bunch of shit from the closet scattered around the family room, and there's stuff all over the kitchen table, there's stuff all over the little bar counter thing by the garage door, the counters in the kitchen. It's very difficult in that space to make food. You know, use it for the things that kitchens are for. The finding of food and preparing of food and all that stuff. It's like there's no space. So like if I am having leftovers and pull something out of the fridge, it's like all I can do to find something to set my plate on and be able to get whatever I want together. Like if I'm doing something that actually involves multiple steps or has different things. Like I had a baked potato the other day. We had a freaking baked potato bar thing for my grandma's birthday. Just my mom and her sisters didn't want to cook after Christmas and worrying about it then, so my cousin suggested doing the baked potato bar, and it's like that worked out. We ended up with these multiple containers of things at our house because there were only like 3 left over after we were done that day, and nobody else wanted them, so we took it, or my mom took them, and you know, the kitchen or the fridge is full and everything. It's just like nobody's been around enough to really go through stuff. But the thing is, it's like I've spent a lot of time this year going through stuff, and you know, I pulled in my boxes from the shed throughout this year, and so obviously I'm not going to say I'm not a part of the mess. I'm definitely a part of the mess. But what I'm realizing is, okay, I had a conversation with my brother last night. When I moved back home, you know, my mom had recently cleaned my bathroom because I wasn't there to do it yet. And one of the first issues we had was my dad wouldn't clean up after himself, and he would just go to, okay, this bathroom's clean, I'm going to start using it now. And, you know, just make it a mess until somebody else cleans it, right? Doesn't do his part. And it was like the grown man child thing where somebody else is going to clean it up, right? Because somebody else has always cleaned it up. Well, it became an issue when I went into my bathroom in the middle of the night and stepped in pee, and it's like, no. It's like, that's not gonna work for me, right? And I had a malfunction. And my mom said, you're not going to use her bathroom anymore because that's what you do and you don't clean up after yourself, so take it back to the other room. So he's got 2 bathrooms in the house of 3 that he can use. So it's not like there's a problem there. The problem is, well, I mean, there is a problem. The problem is that he won't clean up after himself. But like, one of the things that I've noticed for me is it's really hard for me to motivate to clean my bathroom, not because it doesn't need it, or because I can't see that it doesn't need it, or even that it doesn't bother me that it needs it. But when I was talking to my brother, it's like, I think it's just that at least I know it's my mess in there, and it discourages them from going into my space and bringing their own mess in, because now that I've been realizing the importance of boundaries, and am trying to tend to my own stuff, it's like their stuff is like, since they're not wanting to deal with it, it's just kind of piling on and spewing over until like the walls are closing in for me because they're not willing to deal with their mess. And yeah. I told my brother, it's like, I think I have gone through and burned like 20 to 30 boxes of stuff that's been my stuff specifically, but some of their stuff, like we had a bunch of stuff that needed to be shredded and just kept getting moved around because, God forbid, somebody actually put forth the effort to do it. And it's like, if nobody does it, nobody's ever going to do it, right? And I think that's kind of where I'm at now, is I'm realizing that it's not all mine to be responsible for. All I can do is tend to what is mine. So I've burned some stuff where it's worked out for them, because I will include their junk that they don't want anymore. They'll add some stuff to it periodically. But that's no big deal. But that's like, those boxes were mainly my stuff because I was trying to go through stuff and get rid of it. And, like at one point, my mom was trying to tell me I needed to keep this, like the paperwork we'd used for my ex's custody stuff. It was like his psych evaluation and some stuff with that. And there was some stuff with his son on there. And it's like, I don't want any part of that existence in my current existence. So why would I hang on to that? I don't care that that's something that was useful for a time, and that, yes, if it would have come to needing to go to court, it could have been very beneficial for me to have that document, but we didn't. I wanted to rush through to push the divorce through as fast as possible to be done with that situation. So I'm not going to just hang on to a bunch of dumb shit that doesn't pertain to me anymore. I did my part in what I was there to do, and once I was realizing how not of value I was to somebody that it was helping, being my ex, it's like, my purpose has been served. It's time to go, and like, that was the big thing. And I think that with the junk with my family, it's like they never had their own boundaries or anything, and everybody else's stuff became their stuff. So it was just this big cluttered up ordeal, basically. And now that I'm not just doing everything for them, like, if I see a need for something, like, I will occasionally be the one to clear space in the living room, to sweep it up real good and mop the floors. Of course, 3 of the dogs in the house are mine. Usually what leads to it is my parents have one dog, Holly, that when she was spayed, they messed something up, so like she leaks a lot, and like she just will randomly get up and there's a puddle left behind. It's like, so usually it's she's been laying around places and it grosses me out to have to step and pee. I don't want to smell it all the time, so then I'll like get motivated and like clean stuff up, right? But as I'm tending more to my own stuff, I'm realizing that their stuff is still trying to creep in, and I'm seeing that no wonder I have felt so stuck in my lifetime. It's like everything was just kind of creeping into my space and taking over, and making it so it was hard to have my own stuff in that space, so then I go out and I get my own stuff and live a little bit of my own life, make some kind of connections for myself, as I did while I was with my ex and whatnot. And I've said before, I needed the situation with my ex to get me to the point where I realized I had to draw a line somewhere. I couldn't just allow people to treat me like shit all the time. But then it's like, after I got rid of that situation and started, like setting the boundaries, so no, that is not going to be my problem anymore. Then it's like this other stuff that's always kind of been there lurking is now creeping in as much as possible. And it's like, I don't like this. Walls are closing in. That's not cool. And I sent my brother some pictures. Like, I just took pictures of the living room or the family room, the kitchen, the like the counter by the garage door, the kitchen counter, the table, and like the other day we brought some groceries in, and my dad was sitting at the one spot that had any kind of clear space on the table. He was like, do you have a bunch of stuff to bring in? And it's like, well, not a huge amount, but then he just stays there right in the way of everything. So I just start putting it in front of him. It's like, this is literally the only spot, and you're just going to stay here in the way, not helping, and just contributing to a problem. That's not helpful. Go away. And my brother and I were talking, because the other day, okay, my dad will have like a breakfast bowl, and then he will give the plastic bowl to his dog for her to lick it out. If she doesn't flip it over and then can't flip it back to lick it, she'll either abandon it with stuff in it, or if she does, she still doesn't clean up after herself. That's the point. And the other day, he lost the remote again. And in the search to find the remote, I looked in the armrest on the couch, and there's all these fruit snack wrappers, just trash, just in there. He leaves empty coffee cups everywhere and just a bunch of shit. And it's like, I'm not cleaning up after you. I refuse. So for a long time, what I've started doing was, if he left a dirty coffee cup out, I'm just going to put it on his desk in his space. I started picking up the breakfast bowl trash that he left on the floor and putting it in front of him when he's sitting at the table. And then he looks at me like, there's a trash. And it's like, yeah, there's a trash. Figure it out. But like, he lost the remote. So my mom and I are kind of looking around the cluttered up family room, and that there's barely space to sit in there too, because all the furniture has shit on it. Whether it's the toys from the closet, the big stack of blankets, or whatever, it's just like in the way. And she said, come look under the couch while I flip it up. And it's like, why do you always say you flip it up? Because that's always the obviously worst choice there. It's like, why can't you look? So he went over there and he flipped it up. And then she found these 5 breakfast bowls that are just there. And she just started cussing up a storm at him. It's like, yeah. So my brother was talking about it, and he's like, this is sad. He said, I don't feel like I can let Gracie go over there like that. He said, and it's nothing to you. It's like, I know it's not. I said, honestly, it feels like the walls are closing in on me. And I feel like that's a big part of why I had to get started on, like this whole YouTube thing and processing my shit so I can realize not all that shit is mine to process. You know, not all that shit is mine to clean up, and I'm really tired of cleaning up everybody else's shit. You know, and so when, you know, he said that, yeah, I just decided I want to go over there last night, and that's not pertaining to that stuff, but we were just kind of talking about it. It's like, he said, I don't know how you can live over there like that. It's like, me neither. I said, honestly, I said, this year has been a matter of me clearing out space for me, and then I'm realizing how their shit is still trying to invade my space. Like my mom said a while back, okay, I have my my office, and then I have my bedroom, and my bedroom has a lot of stuff that's not mine in it, like the extra long twin bed that they're hanging on to for whenever I do move out. Then they have a bed to put in there in case somebody comes and stays or whatever, you know. And there's a dresser that at one time had some clothes for Gracie in it, but Gracie's not over there often, or as often as she used to be, you know, when she didn't go to school, and when you know, she might have an accident or whatever, and we would need to have clothes for her. But, you know, with the pandemic, honestly, was one of the best things that could have happened to this family because my brother and sister-in-law were working from home, and it got to a point where they could entertain their child at home. And, you know, they spent time getting to know each other and really enjoying each other, you know. And then after that, there was a lot less required time, you know, where she would go over to hang out with my mom or whatever, you know. And that kid, you know, just her existence has helped me in huge ways. Because, like, when I was standing in the kitchen, and I think she was like 3, walking around playing her music on her iPad or whatever, you know, she'd start dancing, and it's like, I was just standing there, and then I had this thought cross my mind one day. It's like, are you teaching her that it's not okay to go ahead and dance when you feel like it? Or like, what's going on here, you know? And it's like, this kid needs to be able to dance, right? So, you know, I started dancing with her. Or when she started going to preschool and I went to pick her up. Okay. After I came up here, one of the first things I did, like, from Alabama, and in process of getting the divorce, one of the first things I did was, like, cut all my hair off, go like really short. And for a while I had a faux hawk, and the whole purpose of that was I knew it was basically ex deterrent. Like, I knew he wouldn't like that. He was always trying to to tell me that, you know, he knew I was gay or whatever. It's like, no, but okay, whatever. You know, I feel like, personally, if you're the one that's always accusing people of things, you're the person that's doing the thing you're accusing everybody else of doing, you know. So yeah. But yeah, he started doing that, and it's like, you know what, I don't care if anybody thinks of me that way. What I care about is that he stays away. So that was kind of the big point. And, you know, one of those, it was a way to help push him back and start taking my own space back, or my own energy back, maybe. But yeah, so I had this faux hawk for a while, and, you know, I'm into my bright colors. Yeah, I kind of always done that. But I had this thought one day, like, I was going to pick her up, and I was uncomfortable so obviously sticking out like a sore thumb while picking up this kid, right? And, you know, and a lot of times my mom and my aunt would go with me to pick her up, but I would go up to the building, you know, we'd park, and then I'd go up to the building and collect her from the teachers. And there was a girl that I went to school with, interestingly, the one that I deleted off my Facebook friends a while back, because it's like, this girl was one of the bullies that, she wasn't nice to me. Why did I tolerate having her have access to my energy and my stuff, my space, any of that stuff, right? So I deleted her off my Facebook when it just hit me. It's like, this is stupid. I don't care if she's like friends with my cousins or whatever because they teach. She wasn't nice to me. Why have I allowed her to have access to my energy at all? Whether, she might not ever even see my stuff or think twice about me, but what if something pops up and all she has to offer is, well, that's stupid or whatever, like my family does. It's like, that's enough to say she doesn't need that access to anything I'm doing to be able to have that kind of, I guess, say so over my energetic existence, if you will. Yeah, so I kicked her off of there. Oh yeah, so the picking her up thing, and I had one day that I was feeling really terrible about myself, and I think it was a lot because I've been doing a lot of stress eating, and it was like I don't know if it was full on my peak weight at that point or getting me in that direction, but it wasn't a good space for me. And I, was thinking about wearing something different or doing something different when I went to pick her up, to blend in better. And then it's like, okay, and what would be the point of that? To teach the kid that it's okay to be yourself unless you're around other people that are kind of snobby and might judge you for it? No, that's not going to work. So I started kind of embracing it, but it was all because this little kid, it's like, what kind of example am I setting for this kid, right? And my brother and I have had the conversation a lot. He said that she's a different kid when she's not around her grandparents. It's like, I know, because when she is around her grandparents, I feel like she attacks me a lot, and it's like, kind of like just all the stuff that's not being done because I'm just expected to do it and I'm not doing what I was raised to do, which was tend to their bullshit so they don't have to deal with it. It's like, nope, that's not working. And as I've been figuring this stuff out for me, I've been kind of passing it along to my brother. It's like, this kid is picking all this stuff up. So it's made us have to consider how or what she is around, and like, honestly, seeing my dad interact with her is a big part of the reason I realized I don't want my dad having the way he is right now. I do not want him having any access to any kids I might have in the future because I think he would be a dick. And because he is being a dick right now, and it's not all the time, but leaving trash everywhere, leaving apple cores even on the side table because somebody else will clean it up, right? I don't care if you were raised on a farm, dude. You're gonna clean up after your own ass, or this ain't happening. And I think that's a big part of why I'm there now, is to really have this stuff be just hit home all the way, and really make me aware of the underlying things that have been going on that have been impacting me that I didn't even realize, for the longest time were even things that were happening, and when my sister-in-law made the comment about I would be welcome to go with them that first time, it's like, that had literally never crossed my mind. But then it's like, that was enough right there. And like, they didn't really know where they would go or what they would do or anything like that. They just knew that they weren't feeling welcome in this area anymore. It's like, and especially the family. It's like, yeah. And I told my brother last night, it's like, I think this, because he was talking about, he feels like I started this unraveling process for him as well. He said, like, once I started doing the work and talking to him about what was going on, he said he feels like he started picking up from me the things that weren't working out, on that end. And he said something about disconnecting from the family stuff. And I said, honestly, that probably is my fault. Specifically, we were talking the other day, he had his stressful thing because he's a Capricorn, had to come through a work situation that wasn't working out and it wasn't healthy, that really made him realize there was some kind of problem, but he didn't know what it was. Mine, since I have all these Cancer placements and many in the 12th house, is like, I didn't know what was happening, but I was trying to navigate through those waters all the same. And it's like, now that I'm starting to understand and starting to see things differently, I'm realizing that my stuff always had to come through the family dysfunction, because that was like, because it's 12th house stuff, it's stuff I haven't been able to see and to just look at as this is the problem right here. It's taken a lot of work for me to get into the space where I'm able to do that. And I told him, it's like the disconnecting from the family. It's like, oh yeah, that's directly a me thing. I said, Mookaite Jasper, right? And he's like, yeah, because I got these little palm stone things on Etsy, some Etsy shop, and I gave him one a while back. And knowing it's one of the way it came up, I had heard it, I think in like Gem Goddess and White Feather Tarot readings, and it had come up a few times in maybe Kino Tarot, and some different readings that I had heard or Cosmic Kin is another one, where I think I heard about that one specifically. It's like there were several places that it would come up, and like the times of whenever the readings were posted, it's like it doesn't matter if it was like yesterday or like 4 years ago, I would come across the ones that would bring that up. It's like, okay, so maybe there's something to that, right? Well, the the one that really drove it home was I was starting to set boundaries for myself, and starting to wear the like more of like my shielding rocks and all that stuff. And as I was waking up at like 3:30 in the morning, it's like as I was waking up, it was whispered. It felt like it was whispered in my ear. It said Mookaite Jasper. It's like, okay. Well, when I looked up what it meant, the first thing that popped up was something about disconnecting from unhealthy, toxic family, intergenerational family type stuff. I don't remember the exact wording. I don't remember where the thing is. It's just that was the one that popped up first. And it's like, clearly that is important. And I think, it was especially important for me because so much of my Cancer placements are in the 12th house. Well, of course, the 12th house isn't connected to home and family, but Cancer specifically is related to home and family. It's like, oh, okay. So, so it's all interwoven anyway, right? So I started, I have, one of my necklaces is a little, is it that one? That's not that one. A little Mookaite. Yeah, this dude. Got that on Etsy somewhere. And then, got the palm stones. I got a bracelet. I'm not wearing any bracelets today, but, I was just started including that in my regular things. And it's like being able to disconnect from my family more. It's like, oh, it's like, I feel like I'm letting this burden down, and it's like I'm realizing that a lot of it was never mine to carry in the first place, but I didn't know that it wasn't mine to carry, or that it was something I was even picking up because it's 12th house stuff. It's like I was just doing it. It's like, oh, yeah. So, so I told him that, and he's like, well, thank you. because he said he was sitting in his therapy group sessions there for a while, and he said he'd start talking, and then he would get to a point where he's like, man, I've been a dick. Like his not standing up for his wife or whatever because the family shit was getting in the way. And yeah, so yeah. So I think that idea of moving away has really been sitting nicely with them as they kind of think on it a little more. Now when it came up, this whole journey over the past year and a half has been crazy, but it was like January where it really started making sense about like being mindful of my energetic boundaries and protecting and shielding my energy, right? So as I've been doing that, this other stuff's been coming up, and like I've had these thoughts of, I need to move away from here. I need to get out of this space to be able to go have my own life, right? But it's like, how was I going to do that? And then I'd keep getting these messages with that would pop up about, you're on the right path, but there are a lot of necessary parts that are still in the works right now, so you must have patience. It's like so much patience, and the turtle, that's one of those like totem animal or whatever that has been very significant. And it was kind of funny because when I was taking the classes at Inner Path, one day Annie was talking about the stuff we talk about in class is going to start coming up everywhere outside of class. It's just like, just pay attention, and I overhear one day people talking about sea turtles for some reason, and it had come up before because hey, quit licking. My aunt and I were talking one day about wondering how, like, of a nest of sea turtles that hatches on the beach, like wondering how many of those actually make it to the ocean, because of course they got all the birds to worry about, the people getting in the way, other animals, whatever. It's like, how many things can complicate their little journey trying to get them over from their shell where they've just busted out of all the way into the ocean where they're meant to be at, right? So that was a thing that had come up recently, and I was like looking at something online trying to figure out that information and all that stuff. And then we talked about it in the group, or somebody was talking about it in the group, something about sea turtles. And it was funny because it did not immediately register that I have a sea turtle tattoo on my leg. It was like, until I spent a little more time with it, it's like, oh yeah, I have one. Oh, clearly that's important, and then one day I was driving home from that area, I think, and I saw this Jeep that had all these sea turtle stickers on it. It's like, that's kind of interesting. Kind of weird, just all that timing stuff, and I kept pulling the card that was talking about small steps, big accomplishments. And it's like, if you start doing the little things, making them a priority, it's like, you don't have to do much, just one thing every day. So just keep going, right? Keep doing the thing that makes it look like you want a life change or whatever, right? So, as then it's okay. Well, back in January, it definitely wouldn't have been a consideration at that point in time for them to be leaving the area because everything was working out okay for them for what they needed and everything. Tazzy. Sorry, he was licking his hip or something. Just licking. But, and then in April 28th, my sister-in-law's mom died, and she'd been living with them. So that was kind of a big thing about why they wouldn't have been able to go anywhere, but that was something, it was always going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when, so it was one of those pieces. It's like, shifting into space, but like the biggest thing has been me learning to use my voice. Takes me back to my scar and the twin flame thing that I watched at one point. Was talking about how if you'll probably have like comparable, like freckles is the big thing, freckles or scars, because I noticed on a picture of him that he's got a couple freckles. They're not exactly the same placement, but I think his are on the right side and mine are on the left, and then the scar is small on the left side and then it goes bigger on the right. But the thing that I was watching the other day was talking about how if you have something like that, it might be a situation where, okay, if he has this thing on the right side where he's got the freckles, then that's something where he's meant to take the lead in, and it's like, well, then I started spending time with thinking on this, the scar situation. It's like, mine starts left and goes right. So that goes right along with me learning to use my voice and, actually doing the things and letting them become less scary, and talking about them more. And, like I've talked on here many times about how I feel like I'm collecting data. I've always been collecting data, and there's just a lot of it to have to sort through right now. So it's like when I've gone to, the biggest thing I noticed was when I would like paint, like on a canvas or whatever. It's like there was so much chaos I had to get out of my system first. And then when I started painting my walls, and that whole thing came up because my dad put a bunch of holes in the wall that had to be patched once I got rid of that bird cage, and it was no longer blocking them. And it was like, I don't have any more of that color. What am I going to use? But I had all these other colors from projects that my brother and sister-in-law had done at their old house. And it's like, okay. It's like, how am I going to work this? And then I just like went crazy using all the colors in my office. And at first I was only going to do like a wall and a half. It was this one section that was all that was a big problem. But once I started patching holes, and it's like, I need to do this a lot more space. And I kept going. Then it's like I had everything done except for one wall. It's like, I can't leave that. I don't care if the bird cage is in front of it. I have to paint that as well. And so I painted like this whole office space with all these colors, and then just like started throwing colors up all over the place. And it's like, I've never loved a space more in my life, but I feel like I needed to be surrounded by the chaos in art form. Realized that was basically in my system, but as it's like energy, now that it's out of my system, I can look at it and I can start making other connections and realizing how other things are related, right? And that's the whole journey of using my voice, starting to unravel the confusion of everything else, and making sense of weird things that I was not able to do before, because this is all like 12th house stuff. All my Cancer placements in the 12th house. So I was affected by it. I just didn't know why or how or the extent, and then as my grandfather got progressively worse, which was always going to happen because he was always obsessed with the things that are going to kill him, right? So he was never going to die easily. But, my brother said something the other day, or we were talking yesterday, I don't know. Somebody said recently, what'd he die of? And it's like, he was 85. It could just be old age. Granted, he had a collapsed lung, he had cancer, he had all this other stuff. But he basically manifested a really shitty way to go out because he obsessed it over his death so long. And it's just, I've talked about it before. It's like I genuinely feel like he really started going downhill progressively as I started pulling my energy back. And, as I've realized that they've basically been leeches on my system. That's not cool. I don't want to do that. I don't like this existence of just getting sucked into everybody else's drama and not ever getting to have my own life, my own freedom, because I was so bound up by everybody else's stuff. And yeah, so like the stuff with my mom being at the hospital every night while he was in the hospital, staying all night there. It's like when I talked to her that very last time I went to the hospital to see him, which wasn't really to see him, because honestly I didn't care less about seeing him. It was to fulfill my obligation per my mother, or as per her viewpoint and her the weight of her judgment that I felt in my system, just to appease that, but when I made that decision that I needed to go there and tell her at some point it has to be okay for this man to die, it's like it's like everything inside me was like, yes, you're doing the thing, good job, you're gonna do it, yes. And really taking initiative, and finally the forward momentum building kind of a thing. And and I've talked about how when I sent her a text when I first got there, I got in the building, confirmed the room number on the text message, and then stopped in the bathroom. And in that time, it was the group chat with the parents and my brother and sister-in-law that it was in. And she comes back with, "Oh, great, he could really use a hug from you." And it's like, nope. It's like, I've never had that relationship with that man, and I will not do that now. It's like, no. And then it was like that awkwardness of going in the room, and my mom comes over and moves the bedside table so I can get in there to give him a hug. It's like, no. And then she goes back to the other side and watches me move it back closer to the bed and sit at the chair at the foot of the bed. It's like, yep, that's not happening. And my brother has mentioned, he was like, that really felt awkward. He said, you've never had that relationship with him. It's like, yep, and I'm not about to start just because that man is dying. So, he's been dying my whole life. So, yeah, whatever. And yeah, but then, my mom, I called her and my grandma out both because they kept saying, you can't die. What are you going to do what are we going to do when you're gone? We don't know how to do things. And it's like, I just looked at him, was like, that's not helpful. Stop it. And they just kept doing it. And he would look at me, and then he kind of looked back because they'd start doing it again. I think it was like 3 times they did it. And I was like, enough. And when I went to leave, my mom wasn't making the effort to follow me out and pounce like she had anytime my brother and I had gone in the past, because we weren't going in enough and checking in on them enough, right? And I was like, what, you're not coming with me? And she's like, oh yeah. So she followed me out there, and I told her, it's like, at some point it has to be okay for this man to die. It's like, he clearly cannot live on his own, and the only reason he is still functioning as much as he is here is because you are staying all night and giving him all your energy, and dude, it depletes the brain cells because she's been very flaky. This whole process, it's like, it's getting worse, and it's like, that is not mine to have to fix just because you chose to enable this man with his bad behaviors for so long that you never had your own life. That was your decision, and whatever. I'm glad I'm learning from it, but I'm not doing that. I'm not perpetuating that. Where that shit's done. And my brother and sister-in-law said they kind of felt like, okay, he died right after they left, and they noticed from what he was doing, because it was what they had been warned to expect with her mom when she was dying back in April. they knew it was coming. And, my mom and her sisters and my grandma were all distracted by this other stuff, and nobody was really paying attention to it. So Jen said she kind of felt like he took the opportunity while they were there distracting everybody else to be able to go. It's like, probably because they weren't trying to let it happen. And it's just like, why? And then I sit there and just all that stuff is like closing in on me. And it's like, no, I do not like this at all. And so we were talking last night, and I was like, before last night, I've had these little things where it's kind of popped up for Pennsylvania as a possibility. And it's like, okay, well, I've never really thought about it or whatever. It's like, I've always loved a good Philly cheesesteak. Well, I mean, since like 2012-ish, I think, when I first ever had them. Which, interestingly, I think I was with my ex-husband lining up for my future. Because I was finally out of the family stuff enough to, we went out for food, and it's like, ooh, what's this? It's like, ooh, I love this. This is the thing that I love. So it was one of those things that came up that way, and then it just kept popping up into my periphery, I guess. Like, something will pop up and, oh, this happened in Pennsylvania, or this movie's based in Pennsylvania, or whatever. It's just like weird stuff is coming up. It's like, okay, I kind of feel like that there might be something to that, right? But my brother and sister-in-law were talking like, well, Texas and Oklahoma and some places like that. And it's like, I didn't really feel like, I felt weird about mentioning that as an option at all, right? Just because they're talking about moving, and then I'm having this thought that keeps coming up. And it was funny, really, because Jen went up to put her pajamas on, and I went to the bathroom. And when I came out, Gracie had just gotten downstairs, and she was talking to my brother about something she had been watching that was in Pennsylvania. And I was like, there it is again. And my brother's like, what? And I said, for some reason, Pennsylvania keeps coming up, and I feel like I'm going to end up there at some point. He's like, huh. He said, he talked about they've gone there for a couple trips sometimes, and they really enjoyed it. And but it's like, it was one of those things. It's like, when I started looking up like cost of living and stuff, it's like, well, that's substantially higher than here. And I felt kind of weird about trying to put that out there as an option when that's the case. And as of yet, I don't know what's happening with anything, right? But when I walk out of the bathroom and Gracie is talking about this place, it's like, all right, I got to mention that clearly, and since Jen was upstairs, she wasn't there when it came up. And I just told my brother, it's like, I feel like I'm going to end up there at some point in my life. I said, whether it's there directly or somewhere else first before I get there, I just feel like at some point I'm going to be there. And he was kind of like, huh, interesting, so we were talking, that was just like a fleeting moment, right, before we had like dinner or whatever. And then we were talking about a bunch of stuff, and then Gracie went back up to watch TV in her room or whatever, and we were still talking about all this family stuff and the potential of moving and all this stuff. My brother was talking about he's still holding out hope for our dad and all this stuff. And got a hangnail. It's gonna now that I've noticed it's annoying me. Anyway, he's still holding out hope for our dad to be able to get out of there and all this stuff. It's like, he's part of that problem right now. I said, you can't get involved in that. He was talking about maybe taking the opportunity to say something, because like some of the stuff we've been realizing, he said he's realized how a lot of stuff has been unfair for my dad as well. But it's like, the hell? There's a guy on a really weird ass scooter, or kid, and leave it, please leave it. Okay, he turned down the path behind us, so it's not going around the car. But yeah, he said he feels like some of it's been unfair to my dad. It's like, I said, that's between them. I said, and the one thing that I've learned this year and had repeatedly enforced to me is I can only deal with my stuff. I cannot fix anybody else's stuff for anybody else. It's like, all you can do is tend to your own stuff. And I feel like that's going to come to a head when we get out of the picture and we're not here to distract them from the problems that they're both avoiding, whether that's with their past upbringings, with their connection with each other, or whatever else. It's like, that's theirs. I don't want it. It's like living there in the house and feeling it creep into my space and trying to get its little hooks in me again. It's like, it drives me nuts. It's like, I want no part of that. It's like, I just want out. It's like, that's the only thing I'm concerned about right now. And then, we talked about some stuff. They said that they thought about Dallas because they liked it when they lived there. And they thought about Oklahoma because it's close to her brother and all this stuff. And they mentioned Florida and they said our uncle's there, but other than that, there's not really anything. He's not somebody we'd expect to visit a whole lot or anything. It's like, okay, so it's like, what about this place that we know absolutely nobody in, right? Maybe that's a good thing. But that did not come up at that point. Like we just kind of talked about the other places, and Jen said the biggest thing is she knows they need a smaller house than the one they're in currently. Of course, they got that with, they were thinking that they would have a guest room for when people out of town came over, which has worked multiple times because my uncle stayed at their house once, and her brother's been over there a couple times, and they've had some other friends and stuff that have stayed with them, but like then they have a couple rooms that really aren't, most part the rooms up there aren't used a whole lot. Gracie's got her room up there, they got their bedroom up there, they got a lot of space, and they were talking about it's too much house. And she said she would like a ranch going forward because she realized that she doesn't love stairs. It's like, I didn't have to buy a house to realize I didn't love stairs. I've always known I didn't love stairs when I was like working at the group home and having to go up and down stairs every hour or whatever. It's like, that was enough. I got that picture. Read it loud and clear. But yeah, she's talking about a ranch. I said the only thing with that is it's got to be big enough to have 5 dog cages in it, because if I'm going with you guys, obviously, because I said obviously my dogs would be invited too. It's like, well, yeah, but we got to be able to crate them all because it'll be a little while before we can trust them all together. And I told them that I feel like, there's some bad behavioral things that are coming out in my dogs too. Like I mentioned the barking all the time the other day. Like when we get ready to go on our walks, they get really wound up and like won't stop barking. So we were working on that today because, we were having this conversation yesterday, and it's like, I got to do something with these dogs to get them in a better shape to be able to move with these other 2 dogs that they've been around but not really together with. Ziva and Gidget have been, at the old house that my brother and sister-in-law had, they had a fenced backyard. So they've been in there a lot and been around them up close and personal, and it was fine. Gidget did not love it, but her big thing was get out of my way and somebody throw this damn ball, kind of a thing. But when I was thinking about that last night, it's like, I really got to work on this, so I made it this whole thing today where, like, they knew we were going to go on our walk, but I didn't get them all hyped up about it or excited about it. I didn't say the word or anything. I got ready and then went over and got my keys out of the drawer and put them on the counter. And I had my back to the garage door, and I reached for the leashes, and they started getting all excited. It's like, nope. And I made them sit and calm down. And it's like they were good and quiet the entire time. Like in this whole process, every time they started showing too much excitement, it's like, nah, we're not doing that. And then that it was tedious. It took a while, but it did work. And then when, the only thing that kind of got, even on like when we were walking out into the driveway to go to the car, it's like once they start pulling, it's like, nope. And we'd all stop until everybody calmed down, and then we'd start walking again. It was like this tedious thing just to get to the car and get loaded. It's like, but we got to work on it because because it's not going to fly when we're down there, and we're not just going to bring all this chaos with us. And I told my brother, it's like, I feel like some of the bad behavior from my dogs especially is because of like these imposing energies in the house otherwise. And it's like, I feel really bad at the idea of having to leave the other two dogs behind in that situation. But my dad's dog people, and I mean my mom always has been, but she's been so distracted that the one dog that's specifically hers, she's kind of been neglecting. But that one kind of, she'll go in and be like, hey, I'm here too, pay attention to me, so she'll start like pawing at people, and until she gets some attention. It's like, she shouldn't have to go through that much work. You should just want to enjoy the dog, right? Like my mom, the dog that had the best energy that we've ever had, and that it really showed me how energy influences everything. And she was the alpha without having to throw her weight around, because the other, like her sister and Chance would start like growling at each other, and she would just go walk in between them and just stand there until they calmed down and like kind of looked away or turned away from each other, or somebody walked off or whatever. She would just stand there in between them until somebody moved. And it's like, I see what you're doing there. And my dogs have taught me all this stuff. I think I've learned more from my dogs on healthy practices than I have my family on this energy things and emotional boundaries and stuff. It's like, yep. Okay, I get it. This is why I've always been into my dogs. Yeah. And, like Ziva and Taz, I love them dearly. But they get into trouble together. And Gidget is starting to get into the bad habits too, and it's like, this is not working out, right? So one of the things is they if we're going somewhere and I wasn't craving them, I would have to make sure there was no food on the table first, because they would get into shit. And most recently, actually, I don't think it was the last thing, but one of the times that my mom was home, before spending all this time at the hospital or whatever, she was home and decided she wanted some candy out of this Halloween, or bag of Halloween candy, that had been, I put it on the counter, and it just got buried on the counter because that's how things work. But she got it off the counter because she was back home, and she put it on the table and then didn't put it back on the counter. And so when my grandpa ended up back in the hospital, and it was like right around Thanksgiving that the whole thing came up. I think it was, I didn't go to the hospital on Thanksgiving. I think I went the day after, maybe, or a couple days after or something. If I'm there, they won't do it. And I don't always remember to check the table before I leave. Usually I'm pretty good about it. Like if I know everybody else is going to be leaving or whatever, I'll try to make that a thing. I don't remember all the details on like if it was the hospital or if there was something else. I just know when I was back at the hospital and my dad had come back to the hospital, he said that the dogs had gotten into a bag of chocolate. I was pissed because I go out of my way to try to get all that shit off the table and away from them. So if they're getting in, especially stuff that could potentially be, toxic, fatal, kind of things. And luckily there was no dark chocolate in that, but there for a little bit of time we were pooping out green Halloween wrappers. But he comes in and says, well, somebody got into the chocolate, and it's like, son of a, I said, why was it not still on the counter? I left it on the counter. When I last saw it or anything, it was on the counter. And my mom's like, oh, I forgot to move it back. It's like, this is the stuff. It's the stupid shit that we do because we don't have to think somebody else is going to take care of it for us. So it's their problem now, right? And it's like, I don't want something to happen to my dogs because my parents are neglectful of their own emotional spaces and or they can't think for themselves or whatever. It's like, no, I don't want this existence anymore. I want very much out of this existence. And I would like connections with, people who have also done their own work and, are working at bettering things for themselves and for, because as you are able to work on stuff for yourself, it affects the collective as well. It's like, I need to go to that where people help each other and aren't just assholes or aren't just neglectful because it can be somebody else's problem, right? And then, okay, one of the things, like, my brother and sister-in-law were trying to get an opportunity to go over and spend some time with my grandma with my mom not around, because my mom would have been over there immediately so she could try to make them feel bad about anything, right? So Saturday I had an appointment to go donate platelets, and let's go back to this communication point where communication in my family is shit. I told my mom that I had an appointment at the platelet place because nothing else was going on as far as I knew, because nobody ever said anything to me about anything. So my dad's getting all dressed up. He's got his belt on. He puts his fancy, ugly ass, stupid Trump hat on. And I was like, where are you going? Because obviously if he's got the belt and the hat on, he's going somewhere. And he says, with you guys? It's like, no. I said, I don't know where y'all are going. I said, but I'm going to the blood center. I'm pretty confident you're not going there with me. And he's like, oh. And then my mom says, well, Darla decided to put together time for the Jones family Christmas, and we're getting together at Applebee's and blah, blah, blah. It's like, why is this the first I'm hearing about it? And I said, now that it's too late to go. And she says, it's not too late to go. It's like, you literally watched me just eat food so I could have something in my system when I go to the blood center. It's like, and you didn't say anything then. You never once mentioned that this stupid thing was a thing, and then, hey, you go hang out with the family. Because my brother and I have been really realizing here lately, it's like, that's what we liked about that side so much better, is they actually, they can laugh and joke about themselves and all sorts of stuff. They're just easier to get along with, whereas the rest of the other side's so uptight and controlling about everything. It's like, that's not fun. It's like, talking about enjoying the company better on the other side. It's like, yeah, I feel that so much. And then, there's this potential or this time where I could have gone to be around that side of the family, but it never was passed along to me. It's like, okay, that's some bullshit right there. So, of course, I send my brother a message like, oh, apparently there's a thing with dad's side of the family today at Applebee's, and I just now found out about it. And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, we won't be there. It's like, well, I figured that because I'm sure you heard even less about it than I did, since, my mom's not even speaking to him because he's misbehaving, or, goes back to that whole, okay. essentially it goes back to just the connections are different with, fathers and daughters and mothers and sons and all that stuff. But obviously he was always kind of a favorite without saying directly that it was a favorite, because, I had shit that she wanted to get involved with and take over. Hey, quit that. Here, drink water. Dibbly. Licking the seat again. Hope she don't want to lick the water, though. Anybody else want some? Yeah. But it's like, okay, so that started a whole thing. It's like, well, they left the house right after I did. Yes. Zibby, quit. Zibby. Zibby dibby. Okay, now she'll drink the water. So, they left the house right after I left the house. Ziva, please stop. And I sent that message to my brother, I think they might have pulled out right before I did, because I stopped to text him. Hey, knock it off, please. Okay, thank you. I don't remember which time. Okay, so what happened when I went to the blood center? I was on my way, and I was not quite halfway there, and the check engine light comes on, and this thing, and it started smelling hot. And I was like, I thought about going on to the blood center. It's like, I don't know that that's a good idea. So I went and hit the roundabout and turned back and went back home and switched out cars. And I called the place, and it got my appointment bumped back to the last platelet time they had and all that fun stuff. And, so I went and did that. Okay, it was, dude, gross. It was the first time, because I said they just left the house. So they were talking about going over there at some point, right? So when I went back to the house, it's like, obviously they're still not there. They're in in Greenfield or whatever. I sent my brother a message and said something about the car acting up and whatnot. And I don't know, it came up. It's still clear, all that fun stuff, whatever. So they went and visited my grandma at some point. And I went to the blood center and went to a later appointment, even rather than the one that I had previously had set. And when I was at the blood center, all hooked up and all that stuff, I got a text message from my brother saying something about that was awkward or something. It's like, what? And he said, well, we just got back from grandma's. It's like, how'd that go? Of course, mind you, I'm texting one-handed, so it wasn't really clear. And, Lenny said the right side is the giving side and the left side is receiving side. So so I always make a point to use my right arm, because the couple times that I've done my left arm instead, it has not gone well. And one time there was a big malfunction and the needle slipped, and so the blood was getting pumped back into my system, but not into the vein. So it's still going to my arm though. But then I started going back and forth from getting really, really hot and to really, really cold. And the whole thing that started the problem was I had to go to the bathroom, and then I really had to go to the bathroom, but I was trying to wait until it was done and everything. It's just it was a big hot mess. And then my arm ended up swollen and bruised for a week. And it's yeah, I'm sticking with the right side, right? Well, the right side is, I'm right hand dominant, so I was texting with my left hand. It wasn't going real easily, and making shortcuts. Our communication was not as fabulous that day either. But he said something, and of course, since I was donating platelets too, this is blood coming out of my system and then blood going back into my system without the platelets in it. So, my brain was kind of foggy anyway, but we had a little miscommunication. It was okay, but the thing was, he said that while they were there, my grandma was being a bitch basically about them, or him specifically, not going to the funeral. Even though that's been damn near a month, y'all. Well, no, he died on the 3rd, so the funeral was the next week. So 2.5, 3 weeks, whatever, still. Anyway, he said Gracie had a choir concert, which is why he would not be there, because he wanted to be at this thing for his 8-year-old autistic daughter rather than the grandfather that wouldn't die, even though he only obsessed about his death for at least 33 years, because that's just the time that I remember, because that's the time since they moved back from Oklahoma that they were like all fixated on this thing, right? So yeah, and then every holiday, birthday, everything became the opportunity to talk about the man's death. Yeah. He was putting his daughter's choir concert over that because it was a field trip, right? And so, yeah. I guess my grandma flat out said something along the lines of, well, sorry I wasn't at Gracie's dance recital. It was our anniversary, and that Donnie's more important. Something to that effect. Something really passive-aggressive and shitty. And my brother sent it to me, and it's like, ugh. It's like, that just feels ugly. Like, what, and of course, as I was talking to him yesterday, it's like, it always hits differently, like the more you continue with stuff. Like, okay, you hear it, right? So that's one way you're receiving it, and then whether you hear it again or write it down, then you're hearing it and you're catching something else out of it. And then if you go back and read it out loud to somebody else, or somebody else reads it and responds to it, and you refer back to it, like whatever down the line, it's like every little step on the way, it's like something else is locking in differently about it. It's like, ooh, that's a whole thing, man. But then, like, that statement, even when I've gone back to it, it's like, there's a whole lot of ugly in that statement and a whole lot of bitchy, and that's just not okay. But he said when they walked, my sister-in-law said, well, that was, 2 weeks ago or whatever. My brother said, this is where it gets really ugly. My brother said, wasn't your anniversary in April? And she said, yeah. It's like, yeah. So it's just like really shitty stuff, right? And honestly, like, the more I've thought about it, I fully anticipate I'm going to be over there at some point, and there will probably be other people around. But when my grandma starts saying something shitty, whether it's about them or whether it's about anybody else or anything else, or I kind of just see myself looking at her and say, well, congratulations, Glenda. If nothing else, you will successfully die a miserable, bitter old woman. Or something to that effect. And like, I told my brother, and he was just like, he's like, let me know how that goes if you do it. It's like, oh, I fully intend to do that at some point, just because I am so sick of all this bullshit. And it's like, it's not new. That's the thing. It's not new at all. It's like, I was always picking up on these like underlying layers of really shittiness, and always taking everything personally because there was something there to be perceived at that level. And it's like, it goes back to that whole, there's I think a Bible verse that talks about something about the man speaks from the overflow of his heart. It's like, if you ain't got love in there, it's like there's no love to be found in there, right? And my family has been the glaring representation of that for me. It's like, there's no love here. This whole situation just blows. I don't want any part of this nonsense, So now my brother is like, he said they got out to the car and he looked at his wife and was like, I really just don't feel welcome here. Like there's anything keeping me here anymore or whatever. It's like, yeah. said, I feel that. And then when I went to leave their house last night, the Pennsylvania thing came up again, and my sister-in-law was in there, and he's like, oh, you weren't in here. So I told her, it's like, I feel like at some point I'm going to end up in Pennsylvania. I said, I don't know if that's like a direct stop and a different way of getting there, or if that's like there's something else along the path first. I just feel like that's where I'm going to be at some point. And it was kind of interesting because, okay, the thing that has been kind of like the Philly cheesesteak that I talked about earlier, right? It's like, I never really thought about location there either. So like there's been some random things that I've started looking up, and it's like, oh, how's this there? How's this there? And then I start seeing, just like having these different things that I'm envisioning, and it's like, ooh, the possibilities, and being able to dream different dreams because I'm not bogged down by everybody else's stuff, even though I can feel it creeping in and trying to impose itself on me. It's like, since I'm not as directly affected by it, and I am able to, do the salt shower, salt scrubs in the shower, and all of that stuff. It's like, I am prioritizing all of that stuff as much as possible. It's like, clean this crap out of my energy, and then it's like, it keeps trying to creep in, and I feel like that's probably a big part of why I've come to a screeching halt on, like, the cleaning up that I was doing there for a long time. Is just because that's, like I was, that conversation with my brother, it's like, at least I know it's my mess and it's not being overtaken by their mess, getting out of their bounds, basically, because that's how it works. And I know they don't care about minding their boundaries because they don't even know that's a thing they got to do. And now it's like, I'm realizing all these different layers of why it's so important. And it's like, being able to dream better dreams and be more optimistic about the possibilities. This whole, like, I've never been in this space before. This is really exciting, but then it goes back to like the point of, had I not started shifting things and, moving them out of my way and making sense of the things that have really been a problem all along, and being able to see them and call them out for what they are and the fact that they've been a problem, even though it's this, internet space where I don't know how many people are ever going to find this or whatever, but still, it's getting it out of my system and being able to have some space to, hey, quit that, to have it out of my space and be able to dream differently and, see things differently. It's really encouraging. It's really super exciting, and then it's kind of funny because when we were talking about that, and then my brother, he loves sports, and he's like, well, should it be easy finding me stuff for like Christmas and birthdays? Because we talked about that for a while too. He said, all you gotta do is just find something Phillies. It's like, and then my mom had mentioned a couple nights ago, she said tomorrow and Monday are the last day for Christmas at the zoo. But then that got me thinking. I was like, I wonder what the zoos are like in Pennsylvania. Or, I didn't know if there were multiples or like where it would be that would be kind of close-ish to one or whatever. But then like I looked up this thing and it had a few different ones that popped up, and I was looking at one and I was talking about this thing with like big cats, and I was like, well, of course, big cats, there's a big draw there for me on that one. It's like, because tigers have been so important this year, and that goes back to that point of like my cards that talk about sacred boundaries or claim your power, and making sense of like these different things and how they're all fitting together. And then like the picture on this one web page that I was looking at had like this walkway for the tigers that you could walk under it. And it's like, that's kind of cool. Kind of scary. And honestly, they're talking about like these different things where you can walk under the animals. It's like, but then what's going to keep the animals from peeing on you? That doesn't sound all that appealing, but how do you know that's not a thing you got to worry about or whatever? But anyway, it was just a thought I had. But the fact that it was talking about the big cats, and it's like, there's something there, right? And then I was, after I got home from my brother's, it's like, wait, I wonder what zoo that was. It's the Philadelphia Zoo. It's like, oh, hey, maybe that's specifically where we're supposed to end up, since that keeps coming up as a thing too, or somewhere near that. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, And my brother was talking about, he said, he used to think that the people there were supposed to be assholes or whatever from what he'd heard, but then he got there and he loved them and they were amazing. It's like, it's like I always feel like, okay, so there was this big thing when my ex and I were in Alabama, and like we were connecting with people and they were all so friendly and everything, and then I was like, I feel like I've been misled, because you always hear about this Hoosier hospitality thing, and then, like, quite frankly, most of the people that I've interacted up here with have been assholes. I mean, granted, I've lived here the majority of my life, so it's like, didn't have a whole lot else to see of that, but I'm sure, I know that's not the case for everybody. I know very many nice people, but like the whole idea of the Hoosier hospitality, and probably just because of the family that I've come out of, it's like, I feel like I've been shortchanged and like gypped on the idea of there being nice people in other places. And it's like, there are nicer people in some of these other places. It's like, maybe that's the thing, right? So maybe just like these other, just being able to explore different possibilities, I think, just going back to that whole thing. Yeah. Anyway, I'm like all excited now. And it's like 50 degrees, so I've had the windows cracked. My hands are cold, but since my dogs are tired, I was tired. I was tired walking them, because we kept like stopping every time they started pulling, and then I make them come back to me when they start getting too far ahead and all this stuff. It's like, they're on leashes, so it's like, just as soon as like there's too much pull, nope, we're not doing that, and it took I think it took around an hour to do a mile and 2/10 of a mile, whereas normally it's like we can get a mile and a half in 40 minutes or whatever. It's just I just kept trying to catch all these things that weren't helpful, and that I, just realizing that's like, oh, that's something where this is not helpful. This is something that, we need to knock this out before we go there. And I told my brother yesterday, it's like, I really feel like the dogs are going to be so much better too when we're away from that situation. It's like, they've never had me in a healthy environment either. So, they've never had time they might have had time in a slightly healthier, I don't know, probably not. Ziva was 3 months old when we got her from a rescue. Taz was a yearish, a little over a year, when we got him from a rescue, and Gidget was 12 weeks old. I think she probably had a little bit better of a start than the rest of them, but it's still, there's still some other stuff with that. Like, there's still at that point that I had to leave them with my ex for a time, because my mom didn't want me bringing them back here. And honestly, now I feel like that was just one of those things to just kind of remind me of it was her house and all that stuff. So it's like, there's definitely more to that, because I definitely can honestly say I feel like I have been manipulated in various ways since I've been back there. And it's like, now I'm realizing, well, that was the big thing with my ex when I was getting divorced. It's like, okay, but what got me to where it was okay for me to get into a situation that I had to get divorced from? And it's like, oh, toxic family. Gotcha. So yeah, okay, so it's an hour and a half, so I'm gonna wrap this up because I want to skate, and my hand's cold. So yeah, as always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see ya.